When I started to upload videos last year, I set myself the odd goal of finding the graves of the original members of the Michael Collins squad, or the 12 Apostles, because I always found the group and their activities during the War of Independence very interesting. I was able to find out a bit more about each individual man while I was searching for their final resting places. So I found out there was much more than 12. There was probably like 20 members in total who came in and out through the 2 and a bit years of the War of Independence. But there was 12 core members. Lots of witness statements stated there was a little mix-up or crossover of members in the Dublin Brigade, the squad, and then there was a little personal rivalry between Mick MacDonald and Paddy Daly, which of who was the leader of the squad. But from what I could find, there was 12 core members, and I found the graves of 9. 2 were buried over in America, so I won't be able to visit those or see those. So that's Mick MacDonald and Jim Conroy. Mick MacDonald left during the middle of the war, or in the middle of the War of Independence, either on a mission or because for health reasons. And then Conroy left because he most likely murdered 2 Jewish businessmen in 1924. So he left and he went to America. The other men are buried mostly in Dublin. Tom Keogh is buried in Knockanana in County Wicklow. Vincent Byrne is buried in Balgriffin in North County Dublin. 4 other members are buried here. 2 away from the Republican plot, and 2, one I'm sure was in the squad, one I'm fairly certain was in the squad, so we'll visit those graves. And this video will just be me jumping around between the older videos of visiting the squad members' graves. So if you have interest in Michael Collins and the graves of the squad and a bit of the history of their lives, please watch the rest of the video. I'm at the grave of the leader of Michael Collins' squad. This is Paddy O'Daly. Let me turn it around now. Hold on. Now, it's the grave of Paddy O'Daly and his wife. So his wife Nora obviously died very early, 1936, at the age of 36. I believe he was married a couple of times, so that might have been a wife later in life. But that's Patrick O'Daly. He led Michael Collins' squad during the Irish Civil War. He then went on to lead the Dublin Guards, and he was said to have been a very brutal commander. He was a very brutal commander down in Kerry and Cork during the War of Independence, especially after Collins was killed. He was responsible for a number of massacres against the irregulars, or the IRA, including the Ballyseedy massacre, when I was 9 IRA prisoners were strapped to a mine and blown up in County Kerry. And he wasn't there. I don't believe he was actually there on the ground, but he was responsible for the troops that did carry it out. So he led the squad. There's a bit online between him and Mick MacDonald leading the squad during the War of Independence, but Mick MacDonald ended up going to America in the middle of the War of Independence. They said he was due to stress, so he left, possibly on another secret mission, but he ended up not coming back. So whether he was a leader at one time and then had to leave, it was Paddy O'Daly who led the squad. So he was heavily involved in acts such as Bloody Sunday, the executions of Daniel Hoey and Patrick Smith at the start of the War of Independence. And he was there on the first day when the likes of himself and Ben Barrett, whose grave I'm still searching for in Dublin, Vinnie Byrne, who I've featured on a few times. So they were the first 4. There was 4 core members at the start, and then it grew to 12. Here is The grave, Colonel Tom Keogh. Come over now, get a little closer to that. It's big, I haven't seen anything like this. So I think from what I was reading, his comrades raised money after his death, and this big one was erected in 1924. So the year after he died. So it says, erected in the memory of Colonel Commandant Tom Keogh by his old comrades in the fight for Irish freedom, 1916 to 1922. Oh, sorry, so he did die in 1922. Killed in action in Macroom, September 16, 1922, aged 23 years. So he was actually, sorry, I got that wrong. He was killed just about 4 weeks after Michael Collins. Oh, for a tongue to utter the words that should be said, of his worth that silver living, that is cold and jasper dead. John Boyle O'Reilly. And then I presume family members, either his father or brother Simon Keogh. In fond remembrance of my old pal and true comrade, Colonel Commandant Tom Keogh, who gave his life for Ireland 1607 to 1923. From his comrade Vincent, that could be Vinnie Byrne. Vinnie Byrne might have been. I'll hold it in case anyone's reading that on the screen. So there's plaques, 1916 Easter Rising. It's the 7 signatory. James Connolly, Thomas Clark, Eamon Kent, I believe, the Pierce brothers. That's what it looks like anyway, could be wrong. 1867. Another Irish rebellion. That would have been, the reason for the military road. I can't remember his name now off the top of my head. He ended up being in Australia. 1798 rebellion, of course. So the High Cross. And their dying volunteer with his pistol. That would have been the Free State uniform. There he is, Tom Keogh. So I'll just put away this camera because the weather's getting really bad. But that is the grave of Tom Keogh, and that was the village of Knockana. Hello and welcome to Griffin Cemetery in North County Dublin. I am here visiting the grave of Vinnie Byrne. He was the last surviving member of Michael Collins' squad. He only passed away in 1992, and he's buried here in North County Dublin. I was here last year when I started making videos and didn't really do justice to the squad or who the men were, so I thought I would take a little visit here today. It was very windy, so I hope this picks up on the microphone, but Vincent Byrne was one of the original squad members. He would have joined with Mick MacDonald, Tom Keogh, Joe Leonard and a couple of other men in either May or September 1919 when Michael Collins set up the squad, and he was involved in the attack on Lord French, the Bloody Sunday, where he definitely executed 2 men in South County Dublin, and he was also involved in the Customs House attack. Now Vincent Byrne would have, I'm just looking around for the grave, Vincent Byrne would have gained some kind of popularity and notoriety as he was able to give, there's a couple of videos of him on YouTube discussing the IRA in Northern Ireland and also his actions during the War of Independence. So So he was a carpenter before he joined. He was involved in a small role in 1916, like a lot of the men were. And then he was selected from the Dublin Brigade, along with other members, to join the squad, so Michael Collins' assassination unit. And I think he was I don't know if I said it, I think he was a carpenter beforehand. And then he was in the National Army, and he would have left, I believe he left with other members of the squad who were members of the National Army during the 1924 Army Mutiny. And I believe he went back to being a carpenter. And this is his grave here. So it's himself and his wife, Eileen Byrne, who passed away in 1971, and Commandant Vinnie Byrne, 2nd Battalion, Dublin Brigade, Old IRA, died 13th December 1992, aged 92 years old. Now, if you watch my video on Tom Keogh, there was a little memorial plaque dedicated to him by his friend Vincent, who was this gentleman, Vincent Byrne. So, the squad were Michael Collins' elite assassination unit, and they were nicknamed the 12 Apostles. And there wasn't a definitive number, but there was 12 core members, and then a number of other members who would have been involved in different ambushes and attacks. Now, I have made an attempt to visit all of their graves. Now, there's two I can't because they're in America, so that's Mick McDonald and I'm going to have to check now. Oh, Jimmy Conroy. Both of them were in America. Mick McDonald left during the War of Independence, and Jimmy Conroy left afterwards because he may have been involved in the murder of two innocent people after the War of Independence and the Civil War. So he left. And then there's another one, Paddy or Mick Riley, who, because the name is so common, I can't find any definitive information on him. There's no military records, there's no grave records. So of the core 12, he might be the one that I don't find. But if anyone watches this and knows anything about Mick Riley, you can let me know, and I'll try and visit his grave also. But yep, here's Vincent Byrne. We do have success. So, Colonel Richard, which might explain why I could not find any information on him. I thought it was Joe. In every book I've read, it's Joe. Turns out his first name was Richard. I assumed it was short for Joseph, but it's Richard. Well looked after grave, which I think is brilliant. Colonel Richard Joe Leonard, late General Collins Squad, Active Service Unit. I don't know what AODB means. But yeah, so 2 squad members are buried here. Which is, there could be more, but as far as I know, these 2 gentlemen are buried here. So Joe Leonard, he was also a member of the squad. He was one of the founders, along with Vinnie Byrne and Paddy Daly, and Mick McDonald possibly, and Tom Keogh as well. So he was also involved heavily with Bloody Sunday and a number of other assassinations. So, and then he later joined, he was also, all of the squad were pro-treaty members. So they all sided with Collins, which is very understandable. They worked very closely with him. And it would make sense that they kind of followed him. Benedict Ben Barrett was another member of Michael Collins' squad. He was one of the original members who joined when the squad was formed in either September or May 1919. And he would have been involved in some of the leading operations, including the execution of Patrick Smith and Daniel Hoy. There's not much records of him online, and it was actually through a Facebook group dedicated to Michael Collins' memory that I was able to find this grave, and they actually erected this cross and crucifix. But the records of Benedict Barrett say that he suffered from illnesses following the War of Independence and the Irish Civil War, and a lot of people believe this was maybe mental health issues similar to Charlie Dalton. So suffering from the effects of what the men had to do during the Irish War of Independence. But he was one of the founding members of the squad, known as the 12, also known as the 12 Apostles. And this is his grave in Glasnevin Cemetery. Now, located just less than a 5-minute walk away from Ben Barrett's graveyard. Her grave is the grave of Commandant Patrick Joseph Specky Griffin. He was another member of the squad, and he was definitely involved in the Customs House burning, and he would have acted during Bloody Sunday. Now, Ben Barrett wasn't able to never gave a witness statement to the National Archives, and I believe Patrick Griffin died before that. He died in 1935, Ben Barrett in 1946. However, I'm not 100% sure on this. I believe he still has some distant relatives that commented on some of the videos before, so if they do comment again. Patrick Specky Griffin was another member of the 12 Apostles, of Michael Collins' assassination unit. And he was involved in the Bloody Sunday and the Customs House burning. And the Customs House burning kind of led to the disbandment of the squad, because there was a number of injuries and deaths. So Jim Slattery lost his arm or his hand, and Sean Doyle was killed. And then shortly afterwards, Edward Byrne, who I believe is buried here in Glasnevin Cemetery, was also died. So then the group was disbanded. But this is the grave of Patrick Specky Griffin. We'll go down to the grave of Jim Slattery, who was one of Michael Collins' men and who was injured during the Customs House attack, losing a hand, sorry. So he was one of the original members of the squad, was involved in Bloody Sunday, and lost a hand while trying to help Sean Doyle, who was another member of the squad, and who was killed during the Customs House attack. But Jim Slattery, as is named here, Colonel James Slattery, he went on to move to Sallins following the Irish Civil War, and he was a farmer. So he must have been a tough enough fella, because he was able to maintain being a farmer even with just one hand. And there's an old picture of some of the squad members meeting up in a pub in Sallins, which I'll try and link or put in here somewhere. But this is the grave of James Slattery, one of the last members of Michael Collins' squad is buried in Ireland. Now, he passed away in 1974. That's Colonel Jim Slattery. So, in my final search for the members of Michael Collins' squad, we'll come across the two men killed in action during the War of Independence. And that is Edward Byrne and Sean Doyle. So, they're here buried in the Republican plot in Glasnevin Cemetery. So, if Edward Byrne, 14th to the 1st, 1922. Now, there's not much information I can find on him either. He was mentioned in a number of military records stating Eddie Byrne. And the only reason, I couldn't find much other records on him, the only reason I think it was the Edward Byrne was because when he died, he passed away in Clare for some reason. I think he was originally from Clare. But when he was brought back to Dublin for burial, Michael Collins attended his funeral. So that led me to believe that he is the Eddie Byrne mentioned in a lot of military archives. And then a second man who was definitely killed in action. Edward Byrne may have died from an illness, but Sean Doyle, 30th to 5th, 1921. So that was the date of the Customs House attack. So during the engagement when Jim Slattery lost his hand, Sean Doyle was killed, and Ben Barrett was the one who covered their exit, along with a lot of others, of course. But at Sean Doyle and Edward Byrne, the last two members of Michael Collins' squad that I can find. So they were the last two members of Michael Collins' squad that I could find. There's one more, Mr. Mike or Michael Riley, who's mentioned in a number of records, but his name is so common I can't find any information on him. I tried looking up different records. He didn't leave a military statement. There's a little bit of a pension statement, but I can't find information. And the pension did mention that his mother was in Chicago, so he possibly also moved to Chicago. So from what I could find, 9 of the 12 original apostles have been located. 2 are in America and 1 potentially is lost to history. But thanks for watching, and I know this video may have jumped around, but we'll just leave it here on the man himself.